Welcome to the Get a Life podcast. Explore survivor stories. Uncover the hidden truths. Join our X-Cult conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Life podcast, X-Cult Conversations. I'm Cheryl Hope, and with me today are Richard Marsh, Lane Admiral, and Cassie Davies. We are all survivors of the Exclusive Brethren, now known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. Today, we have a lot to talk about. These are topics that have been sitting on our desks for a bit, waiting for the right moment to be brought together. Today is that moment. We received audio from a meeting of the PBCC leader Bruce Hales that he held back in November. It later aired over Zoom a few weeks ago, and that audio is what ultimately pushed this podcast into being made. Today, we're pulling apart a scandal that goes right to the heart of trust, charity, and power. In March 2024, something extraordinary happened. The Australian Taxation Office launched an unannounced raid on the headquarters of Universal Business Team, UBT, a business empire tightly controlled by the leadership of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. This kind of raid is reserved for suspected fraud, concealment, or serious tax evasion. What followed should alarm anyone who has ever donated, pledged, or been told their money was for a higher purpose. Within months, UBT's accounting arm shut down. Then came the quiet admission: millions of dollars repaid to the ATO over fringe benefit tax and salary splitting schemes. Not minor errors, but large-scale sustained misconduct. And here's the core deception. UBT sold its services on one promise: that all profits went to education and charity. But those profits were systematically siphoned off through luxury travel, goods, and perks for ultra-wealthy leaders, money that should have gone to children's education. This episode isn't about accounting technicalities. It's about what happens when a closed religious system uses charity as a shield and who really pays the price. We are at a very pivotal moment in the PBCC. What we're seeing right now isn't random. Things the PBCC has kept tightly controlled for years are really starting to surface all at once. Internal messaging, public narrative, leadership behavior, political involvement, media positioning, and survivor voices are all colliding in the open. What was once hidden, compartmentalized, or quietly managed is now happening in public. And this is changing everything. We are witnessing the collapse of a hierarchy that shifted its foundation from Christianity to greed. This didn't just start with the Hales, but it sure looks like it will end with them. We're watching doctrines shift without accountability, history being rewritten in real time, and narratives reshaped while the people who lived the reality are still carrying the consequences. At the same time, insiders are speaking, leavers are finding one another, and the distance between the internal world and the outside world is shrinking fast. So today we're going to walk through the audio that triggered this conversation, insider communications around the PBCC, podcasts, and current events. We're going to revisit the ATO raids and talk about why all of this matters, not just for those of us who lived inside it, but for the public, for institutions, and for anyone trying to understand what happens when a high control group starts to lose its grip. This isn't about drama for the sake of it. It's about clarity, context, and addressing what's right in front of us without looking away. We've all been watching this unfold, and it's hard not to imagine the chaos inside right now. My heart genuinely breaks for the people still trapped in it, trying to work out where they're allowed to land, if anywhere at all. Bruce Hales has built an empire that has trapped thousands of people inside it. And the cruel irony is this: the higher the fences went up around the empire, the clearer it became to those inside what they were actually living in. I've had information land on my lap that showed me Bruce's true colors. Not the polished version, not the public version, but who he really is when no one is meant to be watching. And because of that, I'm no longer interested in conversation with him. That man is evil. What his hands have been a part of, I want nothing to do with. There is no refuge in someone like him. There is no accountability. There are no moral standards. He will never sit in front of a survivor, listen honestly, or take responsibility for the harm done in his name when his hands are creating the issues we have all suffered from. He does not care about the people he has cast outside the gates of the world he controls. Protecting his power and his empire has always come first. What's changed is that the consequences of those choices are now catching up with him and with the people who prop him up. I said that 2026 was a year I stopped holding back, and I meant it. Bruce Hales has picked a fight he doesn't understand, and history shows us how badly that usually ends for men who mistake control for strength. So with that, we are going to jump into the hot topic everyone has been waiting for, the ATO raids. Richard, I'm going to hand it over to you and walk us through what you know about it right now.
Well, it's a big topic, and it's a continuation of a pattern of behavior by the Hales family that goes back a very long time. You really have to look back to 1965 when W.B. Hales and John Hales were withdrawn from. And one of the issues was that they'd been going around the UK and I imagine other countries as well, holding meetings and asking the brethren to take collections for various causes. For example, they held a collection for supposedly for the Paris meeting room, a new meeting room in Paris, and then they were putting the money in their own pockets. And what we see going forward is just a pattern of the Hales family finding it very hard to distinguish between money that was for the brethren to promote brethren's causes and pay for meeting halls and their own personal cash. In fact, the Hales family, it wouldn't be too much to say, has basically been a parasite on the PBCC for, since the 1960s. And we knew, it was kind of obvious that UBT and the whole ecosystem, while it was nominally to provide funding for One School Global and other brethren causes, was really there to enrich the Hales family. It was their conduct to tap into the collective wealth of the brethren and boost their own family fortune. If we go forward to the 1980s, we see that James Symington, who lived extremely frugally, collected something in the order in modern terms of $25 to $30 million off the brethren. That's what his will was worth. So if you project that forward to John S. Hales, the next man of God or elect vessel in line, who also lived frugally, over his period of tenure, presumably he would have collected at least that much and probably quite a lot more, because the brethren in that period became a lot more prosperous and business oriented. So when Bruce took control, he also inherited a vast and a very wealthy family trust packed with maybe 20, 30, 40 million dollars of cash that his father had accumulated from the brethren, from collections, from universal giving, from special meetings. And that is what has given the Bruce Hales and his family this amazing kind of kickstart in the commercial world. When the Hales boys set out to get into business, and they seemed to be amazingly prosperous, it wasn't because they were fantastically talented businessmen. It's because they were starting with a massive piggy bank full of cash, which they could use to fund their enterprises. But rather than being content with being extremely wealthy and having bought or built up businesses that would already finance an extremely luxurious lifestyle, the Hales boys couldn't, enough wasn't enough. And they went on a buying spree, buying up high-end Sydney real estate. Who knows what else they bought and invested in. But the problem was that Sydney real estate real estate transactions are very public. So it became very evident to the tax office and to the media that there was a huge amount of cash sloshing around in this family that was really hard to account for by any legitimate means. And it was really those huge Sydney real estate transactions, 70 million of high-end real estate, that triggered the ATO, the Australian Tax Authority, to make a raid on the headquarters of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And it's that raid that we're focusing on today. It's all been reported in the newspapers over a period of a couple of years. But when we put all the reports together, all the newspaper reports, the inside information, the excellent research that's been done by Damien Hasty in particular into the background of all the people and organizations involved, we find some really startling new evidence coming out as to exactly who was behind the whole scandal involving the Australian tax authorities. So, having given that introduction, I'm going to try and set out as clearly as I can, with a timeline, the whole process from the ATO raid right through to the current situation. So I've
Thank you,
put it in
Richard.
the form of a document, which we will, of course, attach along with receipts and copies of all the news articles, so you can put it together yourself. This is the kind of the short version timeline of what happened, and I've called this the UBT scandal: millionaires stealing from charity, a church rocked by scandal. So these are some of the headlines and images that hit the newspapers over the last couple of years. And the truth behind the ATO raids is finally emerging. It paints a devastating picture of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church leadership. We're looking at an alarming sequence of events that reveals not just a mistake, but a sophisticated systemic tax deception, the theft of millions by the church's ultra-wealthy leaders from its very own charities. The crisis began with an act almost unheard of in corporate finance, a massive unannounced raid by the ATO on the Sydney headquarters of the Universal Business Team, or UBT, which is the finance wing of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. The timeline of consequences, a trail of guilt. When the tax office arrives unannounced, the reaction of those in charge tells you everything you need to know. What followed the March 2024 raid was a series of striking consequences that looked less like corporate restructuring and more like a desperate scramble for the exits. So as we go through this, we're going to put up the newspaper headlines that correspond with the period we're talking about. So starting on the timeline, the first key event was that ATO raid, and that was in March 2024. The ATO's Private Wealth Behaviours of Concern section conducted an access without prior notice raid. This measure is reserved for exceptional circumstances, including suspected tax evasion, fraud, or concealment. The next event in the timeline is the closure of UBTA, which is UBT Accounting. The Australian division closes. That happened in May 2024. UBT's accounting division announced its immediate closure. This was the first critical indicator that the accounting arm of UBT was the engine room of the scandal. Forward to June 2024, the ownership escape. This is the smoking gun. The three men who had owned UBT since its inception in 2009, Dean Hales, John Anderson, and John Gadsden, suddenly gave up their ownership. Like three burglars jumping out of the back window the moment the police sirens wail at the front door, they transferred their shares to less important minions to distance themselves from the legal wreckage. The next event is September 2024, when UBTA New Zealand office closes. The contagion spread. UBTA's New Zealand wing quietly shut its doors, attempting to bury the evidence across the Tasman. Then in April 2025, the tax agent resignation. Stephen Henderson, a director of UBTA and a top accountant for 34 years, suddenly resigned his tax accreditation. Why walk away from a lifelong career? The obvious explanation is to avoid a public disciplinary action by the Tax Practitioners Board that would have exposed his misdemeanors to the world. He chose to commit suicide in private rather than to be hung in public. Then on November the 17th, 2025, Strive 26, the $261 million seminar. Knowing the truth was about to break, leadership held a seminar asking members for a staggering $261 million. The 1 week sprint, November the 21st, 2025, Brethren leadership demanded the money in a tight 1 week sprint ending Friday the 21st of November. The court red-handed repayment. Just 4 days after the leadership's massive fundraising drive ended, the Daily Telegraph blew the scandal wide open. Under the crushing weight of public exposure and an 18-month investigation, UBT confirmed a so-called voluntary disclosure. Let's be clear, this is a corporate euphemism for forced repayment of millions in illegally evaded tax. This was not a move of conscience, it was the bill for a sophisticated scheme designed to divert money away from children's education and into the pockets of the elite. So that's the timeline of events. So now we're going to go through that and just analyze a little bit what exactly was going on in all these dramatic happenings inside the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. So first of all, this is a double theft. It's one crime, but there's two victims. We need to look past the technical jargon and understand exactly what the voluntary disclosure means. There are actually two separate financial scandals happening here. Two different parties being robbed of millions of dollars at the same time. The first victim is the Australian taxpayer. That multi-million-dollar repayment to the ATO was for tax that had been illegally evaded by UBT through fringe benefits.
Fringe benefits are basically perks, non-cash extras a business provides to people connected to it, such as directors, owners, or their associates, instead of or on top of normal pay. In Australia, these perks are taxed under Fringe Benefits Tax, FBT.
Now, the tax rate for fringe benefits in Australia is approximately 50%. This means the actual value of perks being enjoyed was roughly double the amount repaid to the government. While the Daily Telegraph only used the phrase several $1 million, if we use a conservative estimate of a $5 million repayment, we are looking at $10 million in undeclared luxury benefits.
Wow.
The second victim is the Brethren community itself. You have to ask, where did that $10 million come from? Who was it stolen from? In a normal commercial company, the directors would just be stealing from their own shareholders, leaving the taxpayer as the only victim. But UBT is not a normal company. As the Telegraph confirms, UBT operates on a foundational promise to its captive market, the claim that all the profits are invested into education, charities, and other not-for-profit organizations. Every dollar spent on a first-class flight or designer watch was a dollar of profit that was legally and morally promised to the community. That $10 million was systematically siphoned out of UBT's profits. Profits that these directors explicitly swore were 100% dedicated to One School Global, the Rapid Relief Team, and the charitable needs of the community. A wider dragnet, they raided the schools and the charities. While we've focused on the headquarters at the precinct in Sydney, investigative reporting reveals that the ATO's net was cast much wider. As the Sydney Morning Herald reported, tax officials swept into an address in the precinct and raided the head offices of a number of Brethren-run companies and its school system, One School Global. The raids didn't stop there. The Herald also confirmed that businesses in Goulburn, whose owners run the Brethren's public-facing charity, the Rapid Relief Team, were also raided by the tax office. Investigators were seen confiscating documents, computers and phones from the very heart of the church's charitable operations. This reinforces the darkest aspect of the crime. The leadership wasn't just playing games with corporate taxes, they were using the charities and the school system in an intricate scheme to defraud both the government and the Brethren. The UBT ecosystem, a single powerful deception. The foundation of the scandal rests on a single promise made to members of the community. UBT markets itself as a total commercial ecosystem for Brethren-owned businesses. The leaders of the UBT are the same men who hold the highest spiritual authority within the church. As UBT's own marketing claimed, all profits are invested into a higher purpose, education and charity work. That pledge secured customer loyalty and premium pricing. But we now know those profits were being systematically diverted into the pockets of the elite. Fringe benefits, a clever way to conceal theft. The UBT perpetrators exploited their control to hide luxury perks for its directors as business expenses. This allowed leaders to enjoy personal wealth without paying income tax, while UBT claimed a business deduction, simultaneously cheating the taxpayer and reducing the profit available to the church's schools. Let's look at how that may have played out. 1. The luxury travel fraud. Frequent multi-person trips involving first-class airfare and five-star resorts were falsely recorded as international business development, strategic planning, or market expansion expenses. The luxury goods fraud. Designer handbags, premium electronics, $3,000 Louis Vuitton shoes and luxury spirits were deliberately misclassified as IT equipment and client relationship expenses. By the numbers, if we assume a repayment of $5 million and a 50% tax rate, the total value of these diverted benefits was likely around $10 million over 3 years. That means the directors were effectively diverting $3.3 million per year away from the charity to fund their private lives.
Wow. For clarity and fairness, public reporting does not identify who received the multi-million dollars of perks that triggered UBT's fringe benefits tax repayment. While Dean Hales, John Anderson, and John Gadsden were owners of UBT during the relevant period, there is no public evidence that they personally benefited, and no finding of wrongdoing has been made against them. Their hasty departure from the company following the ATO raid may have been entirely coincidental.
The take. If the 3 UBT owners, Dean Hales, John Anderson, and John Gadsden, who bailed out so hastily, were indeed the culprits, then each of them was pocketing over $1 million a year in undeclared luxury. And what screams guilty conscience more loudly than these 3 directors jumping out of the back window right when the police appear at the door? By taking funds that were promised to one school global, they were quite literally stealing from children, your children. No wonder the school fees have been rising so steeply year after year. The $261 million sprint, a race against disclosure. The most cynical part of this story is the timing. As the Sydney Morning Herald reported, leaked recordings revealed Charles Hales telling a global meeting this year's global one number need is 261 million Australian dollars. Aware that publication of the massive ATO refund was inevitable, they appear to have preemptively leaked selected documents to the relatively friendly right-wing Telegraph to secure a controlled and strategically timed scoop, rather than face the far more critical scrutiny of investigative journalists like Michael Bachelard. By running a tight one-week sprint, they attempted to lock in hundreds of millions in pledges before those members could find out that their leaders had been secretly stealing from the charitable pot for years. It was a race to secure the money before the mask fell off. Ongoing matters, the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps the most chilling part of the voluntary disclosure is that this is just the first installment. As the Daily Telegraph reported, a spokeswoman for UBT admitted, "We are working in a similarly transparent and cooperative way with ATO on two other matters that are ongoing." I love their wording there. Cooperative and transparent. Think about that. This multi-million dollar repayment only covers the first area of investigation. If this first disclosure reveals such massive thievery, we have to ask how much more is going to be exposed in the other two ongoing matters.
And I got to ask
Yeah.
if there is, fraud exposed in the other areas that they haven't disclosed yet, and they do have more repayments to make, what's the likelihood that they'll be able to even keep their charity status after that? The public is going to demand some kind of recourse and justice for that.
Well, yes, if the other areas actually show fraud in rapid relief team or actual charitable bodies, they would be very likely to lose their charitable status. At the moment, I mean, this disclosure relates to UBT, which is a commercial operation, which can probably continue to run with oversight. But this is only going to spread, This is just like the surface symptoms of a much deeper disease that infects the whole body of the PBCC.
Yeah, I
So
feel like
in
they're just
conclusion, this is a breach of trust. The voluntary disclosure and massive ATO refund proves unequivocally that UBT's directors engaged in illegal financial practices that undermined their promise to the community. For members, there is probable cause for a civil legal action under the Australian consumer law for misleading or deceptive conduct. Members must now ask, can you trust a leadership that demands 261 million from you just days before admitting that they stole millions from the last pot? Continuing to support this system means funding a leadership that has proven it will steal from its own children, schools and charities to maintain an ultra-wealthy lifestyle. So that concludes my brief summary of what happened over the last few years. So
Richard, explain to me, like, if they're having to pay back the tax that they avoided, but the fringe benefits have already been taken, and just like they can't get those fringe benefits back, essentially. So they're now asking for more money from the members. So they're taking the members are paying for this twice, essentially.
Yes,
Well,
I think you could. Sorry, could I say something? Like,
Yeah.
you could plausibly say that some of this money they're asking for is plausibly going to be used to repay some of the fines that they're going to have.
Oh, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's worse than that, because the voluntary disclosure, which we're putting a very conservative number of 5 million, and I'll explain why I say 5 million.
Extremely conservative, Richard, from what I've heard.
Yeah. The UBT spokesperson said several million, right? If it was 2 or 3 million, they're going to say 2 or 3 million, right? If it was 10 million, they might have had to say 10 million. So I think if they say several million, it's going to be at least 5 million. I think that's a very conservative number. It's not going to be less than that. And this is just the first repayment. But the point I'm going to make is that is just a repayment of the evaded tax. Now, because they've evaded this tax for 3 years, they're then going to have to pay interest on that money for 3 years, and then they're going to have to pay fines and penalties for their tax evasion, which is going to at least double that number. So they're going to be forking out, just on this one incident, they're going to be forking out 10 million. They're going to pay back the tax they evaded, plus another 5 million at least in fines and penalties and interest. And that money is coming out of money that was promised to One School Global and to the Brethren charities.
And I want to just remind the listeners and viewers of something that the Hales boys said in their podcast recently. Their not so exclusive podcast. Here's a clip just to remind everybody of what they said about them paying taxes.
So have businesses or our charitable organisations been specifically set up to dodge tax, Gareth?
No, not at all. No, we absolutely believe in paying tax. That's what makes Australia great. It's what makes any country great, because it really funds essential services like health and education and transport and roads, bridges, gas, water, the list goes on. So any forward-thinking, prosperous country relies on taxpayers' money. My father was actually a company auditor and a tax accountant, so from day one he was always adamant that we pay a tax. And one little story comes to mind. He said he got a call from his father, John Hales, about 50 years ago, and he said, "I want you to write 3 things down, Bruce." And one was total integrity with the tax office. The second thing was to do the best by your clients. And the third thing was, if you make a little bit of money on the way, that's by the way. But I thought that was 3 good programs to go by. But yeah, we 1,000% believe in paying tax.
Yeah, there's been a myth for you, Dean. There's been a myth for decades that we don't pay tax, and it's honestly laughable.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've had a lot of wider community employees join our business that have seen the narrative and the headlines around avoiding tax, and it's far from the truth. And just to echo what Gareth said, I think it's been, since we all entered into business, a cardinal, non-negotiable principle that we've been brought up on, that you pay your tax and you pay your tax on time.
A lot of our clients, Lloyd, are Fortune 500 companies, and they like to look at their actual financials, so we can't have anything dodgy going on dealing with those sorts of companies, yeah.
Yeah, well, they say it's laughable that they wouldn't pay tax. Well, yeah, we're laughing, guys. So you've got a little bit of explaining to do. Why would you be making a $5 million refund to ATO if you had paid all your tax? Please submit your answer in writing to Get Life Podcast. We'll read it out on air.
Don't hold your breath.
I know. We've been getting so many questions and emails about the ATO, what's happening. So, I mean, there you have it. Richard, you did a great job of giving a summary of where everything's kind of sitting at. And I mean, obviously, we've heard that it's been a lot more than $5 million. Until we land a receipt with that, we, can't really
We're going to sit on it.
We're going to sit on it and wait for it to rise to the surface like it always does. I mean, at this point in time, there's really nothing we have to do. It's just a matter of delivering everything that they're delivering to us.
Haven't they also tried to convince the members that it's all closed and finished and finalised and nothing's happening here, nothing to see here?
Yeah.
It's like, that's a joke. That's a joke because the ATO does not wrap these things up in a matter of a year, ever. It usually
No.
is 2, 3, 4, even 5 years. So, yeah, I can't imagine that it's all wrapped up and tidy and
But the
closed.
insiders don't even know much about it, to tell you the truth. Like
No.
I messaged someone on LinkedIn. I messed with them a little bit, and I was talking to one. And I was like, "Hey, did you hear about this?" And no, never heard anything about it. Tell me, right?
I know Bruce does a great job of, well, no, he doesn't do a great job. He tries to cover it all over. I mean, like in the recordings we're going to hear later, is he's saying, oh, there's stuff in the newspaper, but the media is very, very inaccurate.
I liked the one article that said "fleecing the flock" because it
Yes,
immediately made me think of a quote by Christopher Hitchens, which
yeah,
says, "Shepherds don't keep sheep because they like them.
yes.
They fleece them, fuck them, or eat them." Right? And I'm like, wow, and they love to call themselves the flock
Yeah,
in the Brethren,
Yeah.
right? Oh, we're just part, and Bruce is our shepherd. Well,
yeah.
shepherds don't like sheep.
Yeah.
They keep them for a reason.
It's like, I mean, the brethren say, oh, well, look how much more prosperous we are than we used to be, and Bruce has brought all this prosperity. Well, he didn't bring the prosperity by helping you. He merely removed some of the crippling rules about internet use that were holding you back. So if you think that UBT is kind of being kind and generous to you, you're like the turkeys just before Christmas who say, oh, the farmer loves us so much, he gives us lots of extra food at this time of year. Look how fat we're getting, right? I mean, they're not called the little flock for no reason. I mean, UBT is basically an exercise in commercial farming with the brethren as the livestock.
Yeah, that's a good
100%, and
analogy.
they're such a captive audience. They're such a captive market. They don't even realize yeah, they don't have a choice to go elsewhere. They're like literally dictated where they can do their business as well. So
I know.
they
I mean,
can
this is one
literally,
of the shocking things. I kind of want to keep rubbing this in that the reason the brethren have been happy to give so much business to UBT, to pay all these exorbitant prices for cell phones, for computers, for all the whole sort of panoply of services that UBT offers and Campus and Co. is that the brethren believed that all the profits from this was going to the school, so it kind of indirectly benefited them. So now we realize that UBT is not actually a non-profit. It's a business that's been making its directors extremely rich,
And
right?
one way they've been doing that in a way, you could take it all the way back to when they first allowed car phones, if you guys remember that, before
Yeah.
cell phones were allowed.
Yeah,
They had
yeah.
these ridiculous car phones. It's kind of like what Bruce Hales has done is allow members and businesses to buy a little bit of freedom, right? You can
Yes.
you can purchase some freedom for your company by purchasing the UBT computer. You can purchase some profit in a way, right? You can allow your company to expand and make more money by having new rules and being allowed to do stuff we weren't allowed to do, as long as it's through UBT and they control everything. So it's kind of in a way, the richer you get, the more freedoms you can kind of get in there, right?
Yeah.
And you can buy your way to being allowed to do what you want.
I mean, it's really like the old kind of medieval Roman Catholic scheme of selling indulgences, which is where the idea in the Catholic Church is that you go to the priest and you confess your sins in your little confessional, and he will say, he will clear your sins in brethren terms, and you have to do penance or pay some money to the church. And then they realized that they can turn this round and say to people, well, look, if you come and pay us some money, then we will give you an indulgence, like a hall pass, to go and commit a sin. So if you're planning on, going down to the whorehouse and cheating on your wife, then pay us in advance and we'll give you a ticket to ride. So this is kind of the same principle that the brethren operate on. They've banned a whole range of things. They banned computers, phones, so on and so on. And then they have this amazing idea, well, somehow, if you buy it from us, that's not a sin, right? I mean, remember the kind of early days of the fax machines? Like, we all used to have to go round to some corner shop up the road to send and receive faxes. Because faxes, it was a channel of filth into your business. You're terribly damaging things, faxes. And then suddenly they realized that, well, if you rented your fax machine from UBT, suddenly, even though it was an identical fax machine with all the same connections, that was okay because you didn't actually own it. Because it was owning the fax machine that was the sin. But that kind of left this weird question in the air. Well, if UBT owns the fax machine, are the UBTs sinning?
Is it any different, really, than halal meat or kosher food?
Well,
right?
yeah, I
It's
guess
been
people can
blessed.
make good profits out of that as well.
Yes, they do. They for sure do, right? But it's a product that has to be blessed for this religious community to be able to use it. That's exactly what they're doing, right? But with technology.
Yeah, and all the profits go to a good cause.
Yes.
Very good cause. It's FBT for their leaders.
Yeah, so John Gadsden can have a Rolex.
Yeah.
I mean, actually,
or fly business class.
this is something else I wanted to mention, and that is Get a Life podcast number 94, the One School Global Unispace money laundering scandal, which is one of our most important and top viewed podcasts, was another one of the Hales family schemes for sucking cash out of the Brethren ecosystem to enrich themselves. And I do recommend you go back and watch it, episode 94. But the way that worked was that One School Global was forced basically at gunpoint to give extremely valuable construction contracts to Unispace, which was Gareth Hales's business. So in the latest scandal, we've got Dean Hales just sucking money and benefits straight out of One School Global's wallet. And like a few years back, it was Gareth Hales sucking millions of dollars straight out of One School Global's wallet. And you wonder why the school fees keep going up.
So they all get a chance at the money teat.
Yeah, they all get a chance at the tit. Yeah.
And the sad thing is it's all the other flock in there that are having to work their asses off to keep these people living the lifestyle they do. And then you hear in their podcast, was it Charles said that, he doesn't work right now, that he's spending time at home. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you have 55,000 members funding your lifestyle while they're working their ass, they're working their asses off.
They charge every business in the Brethren is meant to get their advice right from UBT. They're charging a premium service charge for this. So every business, all the businesses that are supposedly getting this wonderful advice from UBT are paying a premium for that advice. And you ask them, what do you actually get for this? Like, what are you getting? What are they giving to you? And they can't even tell you. They literally cannot tell you. I've had this experience where I've asked them, well, what are you getting for that premium that you're paying? They cannot explain to you what they're getting, because they're so brainwashed to believe that these Haleses are so amazing, such amazing business people, and anything that they say is making them prosperous.
Turns to gold.
But they're just giving normal business advice. They're just giving ordinary, everyday business advice, and sometimes not very good tax advice, just by the way. Very immoral tax advice, just by the way. So I probably would be a bit cautious about following that advice, particularly. But most of them can't really even tell you what they're getting for that money.
Yeah. So I mean, they're kind of selling you the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, or some cheesy old book written in the 60s by some Mormon insurance salesman that's kind of been a bestseller for the last 50 years, as if you couldn't get it out the library. And this is kind of, wow, marvelous new divine wisdom from God through Bruce Hales, that this is the book to read. I mean, it's not even like they invented anything new. And then you go to their cheesy business seminars with the golden advice, and it's this old saw where you get a jam jar and you put the big pebbles in and you put the little pebbles in, this kind of trashy, boring stuff that is on every single YouTube video by every kind of jumped
These
up
poor
business
members don't.
influencer.
Yeah.
These
I
poor
got some-
members don't realize that they can just go to YouTube and get it if they had access to it. They can just get it for free.
Because that's where UBT get it from. It's just kind of copy, paste, sell for $500 million,
And I hate to say it, but being a member of a cult, you are more susceptible and gullible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
they're not easy, or they're not hard to persuade that this is magical. I mean, they already, think that Bruce Hales' words are something prophetic, and his books are amazing, and you got to protect his ministry. I mean, it's not hard to sell them business advice that's written from a book from the 1950s, like Richard said. Like, it's
Well, 100%, and especially when they're already sort of restricted in what they can access in terms of knowledge.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's the way they idolize the Hales family, though. That's where they can get sucked into this, is because, you can think of the Hales family as the Taylor Swift of the world, right? They idolize that family like that, right? So they do, like, it's just they dig deep into their pocket until they start seeing through it. And then they pull back and they realize that, no, this is really a big, massive scam.
And there's a super easy experiment that I want to tell insiders to try. Please try this. It's super easy. Take a little bit of ministry, anyone you want. Bruce Hales, could be Darby, anything. And just put it into ChatGPT and say, analyze this. Don't say, is this true? Is it religion? Is this? Just ask them to analyze. I actually would say Bruce Hales is fantastic because it pops out right away. It's very easy for ChatGPT to give you an analysis of it. And you'll be surprised probably at what it says, right? Because if he was an amazing speaker, like if you take Gandhi or Nelson Mandela and put it into ChatGPT and do the same analysis, and compare the two, right? A really good, well-known speaker and Bruce Hales, who talks to Jesus and is the most amazing, most intelligent man on earth, right? And see what AI says about his speech, because it's really interesting.
I mean, I was thinking about, people will compare this moment to the Aberdeen crisis, but this is way different. The thing is, JT Jr., for all his sins, he was a highly charismatic and funny guy, and he's the last man of God that the Brethren actually genuinely loved. I mean, people got just fixated on this guy. I mean, he was a weird and creepy guy. We all know that, but it's also true to say he had this magnetism and charisma, and you speak to anyone who knows him, and even though they know what he really was, they still can't quite get over just how charismatic this guy was. And of course, when it came to the Aberdeen crisis, that charisma actually kind of carried things through so that they only lost 30% of the Brethren, because the rest of them were still kind of enthralled by the personality and couldn't believe that he would do something like this.
But isn't that common?
Sorry?
Isn't that common in sort of cultic leaders, like that charismatic character?
Yeah.
You could even say it's common in some politicians.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will say no more on that one, Lane. But Bruce Hales has kind of inherited this position. He hasn't earned it, right? He hasn't won it by his personality. And so the Brethren, their only attachment to Bruce Hales is fear. I mean, that sounds like an oxymoron, but they stay there because they don't dare to go.
Yeah.
And when that starts to crumble, when they start to see that he's actually corrupt and that he's exploiting them for money, fear is not going to hold them anymore. Because, Bruce Hales basically has the charisma of toenail fungus. So what's going to hold the brethren when they actually see this podcast? They've got all the receipts. They realize that the whole UBT, the whole brethren ecosystem, is basically just a family business that's there to enrich the Hales family. And when it starts to crumble, the Hales boys are going to disappear off to their luxury villas they've already purchased somewhere down in the Caribbean. And, all the money and all the property is going to be gone.
Yeah. And I think so many of them are already seeing through it, right? I really the amount of emails and messages that we get is insane with how many people are starting to see through it. And some of these people are were staunch Hales supporters who literally have stopped going to meeting.
Yeah.
Which is good.
One thing I want to just point out, it sort of came up a bit earlier, but we're talking about the kind of the irony of this situation and what UBT was marketed as to the brethren is that UBT Accounting, their tagline was tax compliance advisory, offering tax compliance advice to the brethren. So it's the tax compliance wing of the brethren's financial wing that suddenly closes its doors and goes out of business a couple of months after the ATO raids the headquarters. I mean, this is like sort of police corruption. I mean, these people are supposed to be the ones who keep the brethren in line on tax compliance, and they're the ones who are actually orchestrating and masterminding massive tax fraud. Right.
So this tax fraud, this tax immorality has been a theme with the Haleses from way back in John's time. Way back in John Hales's time, it was way back then, because I know of someone who got kicked out of the Brethren because his business was struggling. He went to John Hales for business advice, like he was meant to, and the advice was to do dodgy tax to save his business. And this particular person was so affronted by the immorality of the advice that he confronted confronted John Hales about it. And he was very quickly run out of the Brethren, and then he tried to go public with it, and he was literally sent bankrupt with slap suits.
Yep.
One after the other, until he was, and they would push the court cases right until almost trial, and then drop each one. They would I think they came at him with 27 different things, and then they would push each one to almost to trial, so that he had to spend all this money trying to defend himself, and then as soon as it got near trial, they'd just drop it. Sent him bankrupt, essentially. So this tax fraud thing has been a Hales thing for a long time.
Yeah, you could say it's the two arms of the Hales family business. One, defraud the brethren. Two, defraud the government.
Yeah.
So just to finish off our section about the ATO raids, here are some questions that you, as members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, need to ask your leadership. So question 1 is, on the ownership escape, the exit, if the UBT leadership has done nothing wrong, why did Dean Hales, John Anderson and John Gadsden, the owners of UBT since 2009, suddenly transfer all their shares in June 2024, just 3 months after the ATO raid? The timing. Does the leadership acknowledge that transferring ownership of a company while it is under a private wealth behaviours of concern investigation looks like an attempt to abandon a sinking ship? Next question. On the $261 million fundraising sprint, the disclosure gap. Why were we pressured into a 1-week sprint to pledge $261 million in mid-November when the leadership knew that a multi-million-dollar tax fraud repayment and a major media expose were about to be made public just days later? The presenters. How can we trust the appeal for $261 million when the men leading the seminar, Dean Hales, Logan Curry, and Caleb Hall, were the senior directors of the very organization, UBT, that was secretly diverting millions away from those same charities? The next question, on the professional resignations and closures. The accountant. Why did Stephen Henderson, a director of UBTA and our community's leading tax voice for 34 years, suddenly resign his tax accreditation in April 2025? Was this a move to avoid a public investigation by the Tax Practitioners Board? The shutdown. Why were UBTA Australia and UBTA New Zealand shut down so abruptly after the raid? If they were providing legitimate tax compliance advisory, why did they cease to exist the moment their own compliance was questioned? The next question, on the diversion of funds, the luxury gap. UBT promised that 100% of profits would go to education and charity. Can leadership explain how several $million in undeclared luxury travel and designer goods qualifies as a charitable investment? The restitution. Will the UBT directors who personally benefited from these FBT perks be required to pay that money back into the One School Global funds themselves? Or is the voluntary disclosure being paid by using the community's commercial profits?
Excellent questions. And once you get your answers, just email us. And yeah, we'd love to discuss it. Yeah. Let's jump into this audio that we received from a recent Bruce Hales meeting. So this audio that we received was originally recorded at the end of November, and it just the last couple of weeks went out to everybody via Zoom. And I just so you understand how we're going to structure this, it's just we're going to play some short excerpts from the meeting, and then we're just going to pause it and talk about what people inside and outside the PBCC are actually hearing. So here is the first audio.
Yes, it would. The idea of trying to maintain a reputation, it's never appealed to me. I'd say, well, it might have been better to recognize it a bit. It's not that you're trying to rouse opposition or provoke enmity. I think it was important what these great servants of the Lord thought of you. And of course, just the generality of the saints to be acceptable. I've always thought trying to maintain a reputation was a bane, basically worthless. What do you think? You're
It's just like I want to pause here just because this is something many of us were trained to absorb without question, right? On the surface, he's saying reputation doesn't matter. And that's even a distraction, but he keeps returning to it. There's a thinker, Hannah Arendt, who wrote about how authority protects itself, not by arguing facts, but by deciding what people are allowed to care about. When leaders say reputation and outside voices don't matter, it is not humility. It's a way of controlling what gets taken seriously.
I just wanted to talk about his speech patterns because that's one of when I listened to it, I had obviously heard his voice in so long, but it's one of the things that stood out to me right away is his speech pattern. It's rambling, right? But let's talk about the pregnant pause. What is a pregnant pause, right? It's a form of speech where you take extra long pauses to make emphasis on things, okay? Like I just did there. Obama was really good at using that in his speeches. Bruce Hales, when he does it, sounds slightly mentally handicapped or something because he rambles, pauses, and you know what I mean? Like it just is this nonsensical way of speaking it's completely weird. Like it's just rambling. And even when you put it into AI, one of the first things I did, I said, analyze this sermon or whatever. And it came back with rambling, fragmented, self-interrupting, full of pauses, fillers, and unfinished thoughts. Right? Like, it's just weird.
Accurate.
Yeah, it's very well. Yeah, AI is very accurate on their analysis. But anyway, that was just it's just so weird. His rambling way of speaking.
It didn't come across as humility, right? It came across as preoccupation, almost like someone trying to get ahead of criticism before it lands, right? When a leader tells you in advance that reputation and outside opinion are meaningless, what they're really doing is training you on how to dismiss criticism when it arrives.
Yeah, well, their podcast hasn't really landed, I think, the way that they wanted it to land. Yeah. So they're suddenly swinging, Brucey is suddenly swinging into damage control and telling the people, oh, never mind what's going, never mind the noise, don't listen to the feedback on this, we're not chasing reputation, we're not trying to, do a PR stunt. No, you're not. Really? You only employed a whole PR company to, bring your PR status up or whatever.
And Bruce Hales says that at one point. I have a note of it. We don't want to pursue favorable reporting.
Yeah, that comes up in another audio, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like Cassie said, it's not just that they employed a PR company. They've employed a whole string of the highest profile PR companies on the globe in every country where they exist. And they've hired the very top PR personnel to manage their PR division. Sue Ash, I think the name is, who used to manage PR for the PBCC. She used to be the PR advisor to Princess Diana, right? So they go right to the top. And not only do they employ massive PR consultancies to produce all their propaganda websites, they also employ some of the world's top reputation management lawyers to kind of defend them in the public arena. So, when they get unfavorable newspaper articles, the newspapers are going to get letters from top reputation management lawyers trying to persuade them to modify what they said. And so they spend millions and millions on trying to, gild the turd and polish their reputation. And then he says, maintaining reputation is a bane. It's basically worthless. So what the hell have you been trying to do for the last quarter century, Bruce? And apart from the public reputation, your whole agenda, Bruce, right from when you grabbed the handlebars, was to restore the reputation of the Hales family that had been so cruelly dented by a whole series of nasty financial and moral scandals dating back to the 1960s. You've, in your new index, you've got a whole book of the index of Bruce Hales talking about how wonderful his dad was and how everything that people said about him and accused him of was unfair, and how even things that John Hales said about himself against himself, he was just being humble and it wasn't actually true of him, right? So you're all about PR bullshit, Bruce.
But also, do you think the members, like none of the members would have any clue or any idea of how much all those things are costing and who's paying for it all? Who's paying for all these PR companies and these PR spins and these, like, the members just haven't got a clue, and they're banking on the fact that the members have no clue what sort of expense goes into that.
And I mean, most of these massive PR exercises are to cover up massive frauds that the Hales have generated themselves. I mean, you know, his famous rat poison thing, and this election scandal that they've spent a fortune trying to polish out of existence. These are all mistakes that Bruce personally made, and all the brethren have to pay lots of money to then, you know, cover it up and polish it over and try and make it look as if it's not so bad as it is. It's not the regular grassroots brethren that are causing massive public scandals. It's the leadership that causes massive public scandals, and then the brethren are paying top PR companies to kind of cover it all up and make it all good again.
Yeah. So here's the next audio. This audio is more about the opposers and apostates and people attacking the fellowship. So here's that audio.
I was thinking about it during the night. Persons are giving up this position. Younger men. Young married man. Attacking their position. I mean, really, it's pathetic, but it's contemptible too. What has anybody got to offer to compare with the fellowship? Say, well, the brethren are wrong. Yeah, we've been wrong many times, and most of us still are wrong. Quite frankly, we're still wrong. That doesn't detract from the fellowship. I haven't finished yet, Peter. So we should not finish with this thing. But to attack the leadership and attack the brethren, well, what does that amount to? Does it mean that everything's thrown over? All the way back to J&D, you throw it all over. And say, I know better. The epitome of arrogance, ignorance of arrogance, or the other way around, the arrogance of ignorance. So even J&D's father said to him, make it better by one.
Yeah, I think it's funny. There was, what does he say here? He says, you say, well, the brethren are wrong. Yeah, we've been wrong many times, and most of us are. Still are wrong. Quite frankly, we're still wrong. That doesn't detract from the fellowship. So that's like a quote from Scarface. Most members will probably not know it, but it's a great movie with Al Pacino. And one of his famous quotes in there is like, I think it was Scarface. He says, I always tell the truth, even when I lie. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I thought of that when I was like, oh, that's, so we're wrong, but that doesn't detract from the fellowship. So that's a typical cult leader. And what they're trying to say is it doesn't even matter if we're wrong, we're still right. Right. Like the fellowship can't be wrong, even though all the people in it are committing crimes and fraud and everything. The fellowship is a made up thing in your head. But
it's, saying that we've been wrong many times, we're still wrong. It's not humility when nothing changes. Like, it's a way of admitting failure while refusing accountability. It's basically saying, yes, this hurts people, but stay anyway. Yeah. And, in that line, make it better by one, has been used for generations to push responsibility downward, away from leadership and onto individuals.
Yeah.
But, you know, the only people who can actually make this better are the ones at the top, and they're not doing it. They have no plans to doing it. This is the system they've set up, and it's working very well for them until recently. Now it's not working that well for them. But I mean, where this whole excerpt that you just heard is really about a way for, this is really Bruce Hales trying to find a way of like, he's going to really put that shame on anybody who questions the fellowship and questions what he's doing, right? It's that the language isn't accidental. It's designed to make questioning feel shameful, leaving feel morally defective. Like he wants to get that inside you.
But also that quote that he says, like, we're still wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's actually just trying to distract the members that think, oh, well, you know, such and such did something that wasn't, you know, I didn't like, or he's trying to distract them that, oh, we'll admit that we've been wrong.
Yeah.
But the fellowship, the position, the famous position is always right. So, you know, hold your faith in the position, whatever that is. Even if you think something we've done is wrong, hold your faith in the position.
Yeah, like even though UBT is being investigated for tax fraud and all the directors quickly sold other shares and ran away, still invest in us, right? Like it's the most ridiculous thing. Like if it was
they're convicted of tax fraud. It's not just an investigation anymore. They've paid $5 million. They're convicted. They're guilty.
The other thing that he does in here is leadership and the fellowship are collapsed into the same thing. So if you question leadership, you're told you're throwing everything away. And I mean, he goes all the way. It's your history, your faith, your people, your identity. He goes all the way back to JND. The arrogance that Bruce Hales has is so palpable. Like you're sitting there listening to this, and then he's sitting there telling everybody else that they're arrogant. Meanwhile, he is the complete and utter definition about arrogance.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that really strikes me is he makes a completely false argument here, because he's saying basically, if you reject me, you reject the Great Hales dynasty, then you're rejecting JND, because, you know, obviously JND was this amazing guy, and I'm in the same line of leaders, so therefore, if you reject me, you're rejecting JND. And this is very much the Hales mentality. He takes the glories of the past leaders and uses it to build up his own position. And I mean, let's just give you an analogy. The President of the United States, I mean, just speaking about that in the abstract, George Washington, the great founder of the Union, first President of the United States. Okay, let's say he was a good and wonderful and insightful guy. I mean, you know, within his measure, he certainly was highly influential, and he spoke out for freedom and whatever. But just because George Washington was a great and brilliant politician doesn't mean that every president of the United States following after him is a wonderful, moral and brilliant and great politician. I mean, some of them are complete dirtbags, right? So why does the fact that JND was the number one leader in the PBCC, I mean, not that that's even true, but that's the theory.
Yeah.
Why does that mean that if you think or state that Bruce Hales is corrupt, why does that mean you're rejecting JND? No, you're just saying that after 200 years, the current leader, who has no moral connection with the original leader, has gone wildly off course, right?
He couldn't have possibly. He was God anointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I want to leave with the insiders after this last audio that we just listened to is that if you're still inside and that really made you uncomfortable, that discomfort isn't arrogance. So don't listen to this. It's literally your conscience trying to do its job. So like, I think that's the biggest thing that Bruce Hales gets away with in here is he's prepared his flock for how many years. When he speaks like this, he's got such control over their own emotions, and he's programmed them so beautifully that when they do get that discomfort, his words come into their head and override their conscience that's trying to do its job. So literally, let's just sit in that uncomfortableness and let it dig up the truth that is actually sitting inside you versus this bullshit that this arrogant evil leader is trying to tell you.
Yeah, and I think it's a mass exodus they're having as well, with people leaving en masse, is that he's so concerned about that. The best way he knows how to counter that is to attack them for arrogance and make the insiders believe that those leavers are somewhat arrogant, somewhat all these bad things. And then it puts a fear into them, and it feels like, oh, I don't want to be called, I don't want to be arrogant. And if I'm thinking that way, oh, I must be arrogant. It's not arrogance.
No.
It's you're waking up to reality. You're waking up to the corruption.
Exactly.
And we're not saying that we know better. That's not it. That we are taking what we experienced and lived inside there, and we're talking about it. That isn't ignorance. It's not arrogance, and it's not arrogance of ignorance. That literally is our truth being presented. These are actual factual receipts that every single person on here comes and delivers, whether that is about the political stuff that's going in there, whether that is about the financial stuff that's going on there, or whether it's all about sexual abuse. I want to reiterate again, a sexual abuse survivor does not go to the police and do a police statement because they're lying. That is ignorance, Bruce D. Hales. That is absolute ignorant and arrogant of you to sit there and say this bullshit in a meeting when everybody out here is still digging their way through their trauma.
But it's not unprecedented as well. Like we in the normal outside world have seen this pattern repeat itself over and over in other cultic groups, in other high control groups, and this happens over and over again, and when they start to fall apart. So we're telling you in advance, this is a pattern that we see over and over and over when other cultic groups start to unravel.
Yeah.
And the cult calling someone arrogant for thinking of leaving or wanting to leave is like, it's a challenge to him, right? Because it's like, you're arrogant because you think you know better than our way of life. And it's like, well, Brucey, you've never tried another way of life. You don't know fucking shit. But that's what he's saying, right? Is, oh, you think you're smarter than me. That's why you're leaving. It's arrogance to think you're smarter. And I remember my father saying the same things in the cult. Like it was, he was quoting, I don't know if it was John Hales or something, but how evil it was to ever think that you're smarter than your parents. You know, or that you know something more than your parents, right?
It's a classic thought stopper, isn't it? It's something they throw in to stop you thinking. And I mean, it's a very false argument, because you can say, well, the Prophet Muhammad has, X 100 million followers, so you think you know better than them. You know better than the Prophet Muhammad, or you know better than Gandhi, or any popular leader. I mean, Bruce has like 50,000 followers, right? I mean, you can find obscure cults in Asia that no one has ever heard of that have millions of members and they have a leader. You think you know better than, some obscure Chinese or Indian name? It's just rubbish. It's a
Might I just say,
might
I just say, like, even the leader of Gloriavale uses that same argument, and he's got a tiny little commune in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And he uses that same argument with his members.
I mean, Bruce, do you know better than the Pope? Do you know better than the Archbishop of Canterbury?
Well,
do you?
And like, I remember my father saying to me too, do you think you know better than all the brethren? Do you think you know better than all of them? Well, let's just do some numbers, right? Because there's 50,000 brethren. So in 2014 and 2015, the peak of ISIS had between 50,000 and 200,000 members. ISIS, right? Yeah. So do I think I know better than 50,000 ISIS members? I do, actually. I do. I think that it's not good to hurt other people, right? Yeah. So when brethren members ask you if you're inside and you're thinking of leaving, and a priest or your dad goes, you think you know better than the brethren? Yeah, it's okay to
You're
say
allowed
yes.
to say yes. Exactly.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
allowed to say yes. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, 99.9999% of the world's population knows better than the Brethren, so you're in good company.
Okay, our next audio is where Bruce Hales heads into politics and socialism,
Ooh.
as he calls it.
Yeah, I like this one.
So here's the audio to that. Stay tuned for part 2, where we uncover Bruce's stance on tariffs and the U.S. politics, and we read out more insider messages. We leave you today with a powerful song created by an insider. This song is called The Cultist.
Yo, listen up. These words, they spin like webs in the dark. Cold vibes creeping, but we breaking free, leaving our mark. They say if you do what is right, the Lord will look after the rest, you will be blessed. But I see the chains, blind faith confessed. There's control in disguise, keep you suppressed. Promise heaven, believe you stress. Only 3 days away from the supper, they whisper in halls. End times coming, building invisible walls. Fear tactics dropping like bombs in the calls. But I question the script, watch the empire fall. Pray for those opposed to the testimony, and our brother to be removed. Silence and dissent, hating on the groove. Exile, the thinkers keep the flock approved. But truth don't hide, it's time we move.
Oh, we see through the lies, the twisted words they say. Breaking free from the haze, finding our own way. No more blind devotion, open eyes today. Rise up from the shadows, let the real light stay.
Leave it with the Lord, they shout when questions arise. Dodging the truth, hiding behind skies. But accountability dies in those lies. We demand answers, no more alibis. We do the thinking, you do the doing, hierarchy's game. Leaders on thrones, followers tame. Brainwash routine, keeping your chain. But I reclaim my mind, no longer framed. Our beloved brother once said, quoting the ghost, idolizing one man for getting the host. Blind worship roast at what cost? History repeats, but we're breaking the post.
Oh, we see through the lies, the twisted words they say. Breaking free from the haze, finding our own way. No more blind devotion, open eyes today. Rise up from the shadows, let the real light stay.
Commerce in the assembly, tied in your soul. Money over mercy, filling the hole. Be a dormant for the brethren, step on your goal. Sacrifice self, lose control. We need to have our will smashed, crushing the fire. Break you down, rebuilding the empire. Half of the church are on antidepressants, the other half should be joking on pain, that's the real debris. But I rise from the ash, no more on my knee. See the manipulation, feel the breeze. Flipping the script, turning tables on them. Code scenes crumble when we call them. Empower the voice, no more solemn. Free thinking army, we got the column. Question the quotes, peel back the layers. Reveal the control, dismiss the players. From blessed to broken, now we're the slayers of mind games and fears, eternal betrayers.
Oh, we see through the lies, the twisted words they say. Breaking free from the haze, finding our own way. No more blind devotion, open eyes today. Rise up from the shadows, let the real light stay.
Yeah, that's the truth serum. Spit it out loud. Cold chains broken, stand proud.
How can you support Get a Life podcast? You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/Get a Life podcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.